Welcome to Game Changers live from Miami, Florida. My name is Sergio Tejeda. I'm your host. And each and every week, we bring you someone who has been a game changer in their field and who's touched the lives of thousands to get their perspective on their journey, their mindset, their struggles and successes so that we can inspire you on your journey. So let's get started right now. In any great city, there's a great newspaper, and the city of Doral is absolutely one of those cities where the Doral Family Journal is there to provide updates on events, news, and happenings all throughout the city. And I want to thank them because they are the sponsor of this episode where we highlight the founding mayor of the city of Doral, Mr. Juan Carlos J.C. Bermudez. We'll get into his thoughts around leadership and what inspired him at an early age and what were some of those game-changing moments that really changed the trajectory of his life and his career. It's really inspiring. Check this one out. You're not going to want to miss it. And be sure, if you're in the city of Doral, anywhere you go, you're going to find this newspaper there. Absolutely check it out. And you can check it out on the DoralFamilyJournal.com. Thank you so much for your support of Game Changers and enjoy the episode. And welcome to Game Changers Live. You can catch this and every episode every Thursday. We come at you weekly because we know that motivation and inspiration is something we need to get into and jump into weekly. And on this show, we have leaders who have been game changers in their field and have inspired thousands. And what's great about this show is that we get deep on their experience, their struggles, their successes, so that we can inspire you on your journey. So my guest today is none other than Juan Carlos J.C. Bermudez, the mayor of Doral. Welcome, my friend.
Sergio, it's great to see you and great to be here with you and those who are going to be watching us.
Awesome. So a little background on the mayor. So he was actually the founding mayor of the city of Doral and served in that capacity for the first 9.5 years of the city's existence, and he was reelected as mayor of Doral in 2016. He's currently a member of the advisory board of the United States Conference of Mayors, as well as the vice chairman of the Miami-Dade County Transportation Planning Organization. Under his leadership, the city added over 121 acres of playgrounds, ball fields, and recreational facilities while purchasing, through grants and funds, an additional 45 acres of parkland. These parks include Doral Central Park, Morgan Levy Park, Doral Meadow Park, Downtown Doral Park, Trails and Trails Park, and Veterans Park. And during Mayor Bermudez's terms, the city has received numerous national accolades, including being chosen for the best city of business startups by Business Week, number 2 of America's top 25 towns to live, and many, many more that we can't even cover here. There's a long list of accolades. And you know, me being very close to the city of Doral, I absolutely love taking my family and kids there. It's such an absolute pleasure to be a part of that. So welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you, Sergio.
So what I'd like to get into, before we get into the city of Doral, this show is about getting your perspective, right? Kind of going deep on the person. And there's a lot of people that look up to you. You've done some amazing things. Not many people could be a founding mayor of a city, one of the fastest growing cities in the country that is so diverse and has so much business opportunity and is such a lively and beautiful place to go with so many parks where, in Miami South Florida hasn't been known for having all these amazing parks like some other cities do, and Doral has able to achieve that. So, take me back a bit. So where did you grow up? What was your childhood like? Was there something in your as you grew up that inspired you to take on a leadership role in a city?
Well, I was born in Santa Clara, Cuba. We came, like many Cuban families, due to communism. I grew up in West Hialeah. Like many families, we went up north and moved down when I was very young. So, one of the things that did impact me a lot was when I was a kid growing up in Hialeah, for an immigrant kid, the parks were the place you were able to go. Your parents were usually working,
Right.
My mother, who, had to work when she got to this country. My father, obviously, too. So the parks were a great place where you could go as a kid and learn how to play different sports, do different things, have different activities. And when I moved to Doral in 1998, I realized soon that there was not one park for at that time, the two little daughters, to even go to a playground to, because there were no parks in this area, but we were being taxed, which was an amazing, um, statistic. We had no green space.
Mm.
And in time, that really kind of bothered me a little bit. And it's probably one of the reasons why I got involved in the incorporation process, because I felt our dollars were not being spent wisely. And I felt that the county, certainly at the time, an unincorporated date, was not providing something that I think a lot of kids needed, not just, immigrant kids like myself, which there's a lot in Doral, but any child. There was not one basketball court, baseball field, soccer field, football field, not even playgrounds, really, in any public space. There were in some private communities. So I found that to be something that I felt needed to be changed.
So back then, it was still part of unincorporated data. It hadn't become a city yet at that
Correct.
point, right? It was a
Correct.
lot of kind of warehouse district for businesses and
Yeah,
well, a lot of farms as well, right?
right. There was some residents too. By that time already, Doral Park had been built. Costa del Sol. So there were plenty of residents already. The problem was, the county had allowed a lot more residential development, which was fantastic, but they were not providing the amenities. And really, to a certain extent, we were being taxed, and those dollars that we were paying were being taken out to other parts of the county, not to provide us
Mm.
here. So it was a little bit frustrating, and seeing in particular that my children didn't have a place to go play. I mean, for not, the adults didn't either. So let's be clear on that. So it was kind of frustrating. And we had only one school at the time. There was just a feeling that we can do a lot better than this. Certainly in the community. So I became involved with the incorporation process because of that. I had no intention of running for mayor, but when we started One Doral, they asked me to be president. I was. And I was named to the community council by Commissioner Jose Pepe Cancio, and then elected to that position. So when it came time to run for the first mayorship, most of the people told me, "Listen, we want you to be mayor. We want you to run for mayor," which I did, and two others did at the time, and we won. And in the first round, and after that, it became the complicated and arduous task of starting a city, including trying to build those parks that we didn't have.
Yeah, when you start off, the task seems so giant and so long. And how did you maintain? Obviously, it's a very exciting time because it's something so new, and you get to really create a city from scratch in a sense. But it seems like such a daunting task to get priority, to get dollars, and convincing people. And you're doing it, with a very kind of fresh staff, right?
Yeah, it was very daunting at the beginning. My office was probably there were three people in a very, very small area, which was myself, the city clerk, and the interim city manager.
Almost like a startup.
Yeah, it
In a
was like
sense.
it was like a startup, and it was very difficult. And we were on the corner of 97th and 36th in a building there, and they gave us a little office, and they let us use the conference room. It was very, very difficult because we first had to make sure that we got the proper dollars from the county. Now you got to remember the county didn't want us to incorporate. The residents voted
Oh,
overwhelmingly for it, almost 90%. But the county put I'm not even going to say pebble, they put boulders in the way. And part of the biggest boulder they put was what they created, which was called mitigation. Mitigation basically said that of the 2.447 mills that was the county millage rate at the time, and which was ours, they were going to keep 1.5 mills. So they were going to take about 60% of our dollars anyways. And so
wow.
immediately we had to fight, go to Tallahassee, fight the county. They were not happy about it. I mean, put yourself in their shoes. They were basically getting a lot of tax dollars from the business and the residential community, and not really fixing the roads, not really providing police services at the level it should be provided, not having parks, not having green space. Yeah, so difficulty number one became number one. We need to set up a structure, and we need to take over some of these departments that the county has been really running in this area. And number two, I had been the chair of the Doral Community Council, so that's how the process began. Number two, let's get the dollars, and then for me it was very important to get the community involved. So we created a number of committees for major issues, transportation, education, a couple of others. Something as basic as a city seal, we wanted input, and we started
Mm.
having public meetings because I felt it was important to have the people be part of this process. So it was not easy. I can't tell you. It probably aged me a little bit quicker than I would have liked. When I started this, I was in my 30s, so it's like I was a young mayor, and it was, but it was a lot of work.
What drives you in the morning when you get up? Maybe back then and now, is it the same things? Because going into public service it's not easy, and it could be dirty at times, and right, and
Oh yeah.
very, very challenging. Why do it?
It's a great question. I'm a very justice oriented person. I think that's why I went to law school. And I think that's why I got involved when I felt that injustice was being committed, not only to my family, but to the residents of what is now
Mm,
the city of Doral. What drives me is fairness, and I want a fair and just opportunity for everyone. And that's really different people get driven by different things. Sometimes people like the limelight, some people like the money, other people like the recognition. For me, the most important thing is seeing results that benefit the community being done the right way. So that is was my driving force and is my driving force today.
one of the things that I always tell people about the city of Doral that I find extraordinary, and maybe it's a fact, a testament to your leadership or the culture that you've put in place, but it's a very accessible government, meaning you guys are always out there. You're always out in the community, you're always doing different events, and very approachable. And you listen, right? And so it seems like a very well run city, very great city to live in, because I think everybody enjoys it. There aren't many people that live in Doral that really have a lot of complaints. For the most part, you guys are doing some amazing things, and you're very accessible.
Right.
So, what is it about how do you, what type of leadership approach do you take to make that possible?
Well, I think one of the things, Sergio, that's important for me, and one of the things that I'm most proud of is, when the residents tell me, "Hey, you haven't changed. You knocked on my door, and you were very straightforward, and then you remembered me." I think for us, the most important thing, and for me in particular, was to send the message that it was going to be a different type of government. That it was going to be a government that's accountable, a government that's transparent, and a government that's efficient and effective. If you come to City Hall, you'll see that you go to the third floor where the elected officials are at, and all our offices have open windows. So, and part of that it's by design, because I didn't want anybody to say you're meeting with a lobbyist behind closed doors, you're meeting with somebody else behind
Yeah.
closed doors, and that was very important. We also, as soon as we became a city, one of the first things we did, even in our prior city hall, which was not permanent, was to try to get all our meetings on the internet, and also we got a channel 77, and we wanted to make sure that no one could say they didn't know what their government is doing, because I think in today's, let's call it, and I'm not going to call it poisoned, but certainly jaded political process, people just don't believe that politicians, are accessible and will listen to them. And we wanted to change that from day one. My leadership style has always been one about being responsive. I know there are other mayors out there that when they get the tough question, they don't want to answer it. Uh, I wasn't elected to answer just the easy questions. I was elected to also
Right.
deal with the tough questions, and I'm not going to shy away from it, because I think that's my responsibility, not only as a mayor but also as an elected official. So uh, it's a philosophy that I've had from the beginning. I'm going to tell you. I always tell voters when I knock on their door, and I think you've heard me tell you this before. I knock on people's doors during the campaign, and when they tell me, well, will you agree with me? My answer is always, do not vote for me if you want me to agree with you 10 out of 10 times. If you want me to listen to
Hmm.
you and make a decision that may agree with you because I think it's the solid one and the proper one, then vote for me. Because if I'm going to tell you that we're going to agree all the time, I'd be lying to you. Because my wife and I, my children and I, My siblings and I, my friends and I don't agree with each other all the time. And really, any politician that tells you they, whatever you're saying is fine all the time, run in the other direction because they're not being honest.
Right. And authenticity is really important these days. I think there's a lot of capital, relationship capital that's built up in authenticity. Like you said, just being yourself and being open and honest. Like you said, you're not always going to have all the lights green, down the road. You're going to encounter these issues, other points of view, but being true to yourself and true to your values, when people know where you stand, at least they respect you for that, and not necessarily because they're aligned with you, but because of the fact that you stand by your values, and people see what you stand for.
Right. And I think that's important. I think you hit a word that's very, very important. Character and value are two things that I think are critical. And that is something that some people believe has been lost in, the world of politics today. You have to, as I tell my kids, and, character is not determined when everybody's looking at you. Character is determined when nobody's around and you find that, those $1,000 that somebody else probably dropped out of their pocket, you got to return it. So character and value is rare, but it's something that we need to have more of, in society in general. And I think in politics, that's led to some of this jaded perspective from the electorate.
Especially here in South Florida, where we have a long history of jaded politics.
Yeah, I think, look, I always tell people it's funny because, I think people will respect you if you tell them what you think, even if you disagree with them, as long as you do it in a respectful manner and there's a reason for it. If you do it for the wrong reasons, as some politicians have done in South Florida, then I think that it becomes an issue.
So cultural diversity is really, really important. And I don't know that there is a more culturally diverse city in Florida, perhaps in the United States, than Doral. Was that a planned thing? Was that something, when people started moving here, when you're doing the marketing, were you kind of recruiting folks from all over Latin America and the US? And what was that like?
Well, it wasn't really a planned thing. I think it kind of happened. One of the things that really occurs is we're right west of the airport, and we also are probably the only city that has a very good mix of industrial, commercial, and residential right west of the airport, with very good housing, relatively new housing in most instances. And I think that leads to a lot of international trade, a lot of national trade. We did, in our original master plan, target certain things. One of them obviously was parks, which you previously mentioned. We really made a very big change on that, or green space. The other one was targeting certain industries. The medical industry was one of them. And today we probably are at the center of most of the medical growth here in South Florida, beyond, Jackson Memorial Hospital, Kendall AMI, Miami Children's, Baptist, even Leon Medical Center is headquartered here. And one of the things we did want to do as part of our master plan was creating Class A office space that would let us attract national and international headquarters. And so there was a bit of a goal setting, for want of a better term, and creating a scenario where we would try to attract international and national companies, because we felt we had the right place where they could live close to their work, be by the airport, and then find a community that would help us grow, and that led to a lot of diversity to begin with, and so I would tell you it's a combination of both. We certainly are very proud of the fact that we are one of the most diverse communities, and when I say that, I'm talking about not only Hispanic but also European and even Asian. 3% of our population is Asian. A lot of the Taiwanese, South Korean, Japanese companies in South Florida are headquartered in Doral.
Interesting. And art is now also becoming a part of the fabric of Doral, right? With the new Doral Contemporary Art Museum. And tell me that role that you guys are playing in terms of attracting more art and design, to the city.
Yeah, we've always had a pretty aggressive art in public places program. If you go back to our first parks, like Morgan Levy Park, there's a work of art that was really commissioned right there in the center on the circle. So, and we actually now have it for practically every major project. So, the Doral Contemporary Art Museum started about 3 or 4 years ago. They asked me to be on the board. I am on the board. Our goal is to obviously bring some contemporary art. Our new cultural center, which is right across here from City Hall, right behind me to my right, is going to be a great facility to have some of this new art work that we're doing. Now, last year, we were blessed working with the Doral Contemporary Art Museum to have the Manolo Valdez exhibit, which is very few cities worldwide have had it. We had it for 6 months. We were lucky enough to have a lot of those pieces close to us, and then we had the only Nutcracker from the Miami City Ballet done outside, obviously during COVID, in the country. And that was thanks to there's also a foundation which I'm also a part of, which is the Downtown Doral Cultural Foundation, which the Codina family has sponsored. And we were lucky enough to have two nationally covered art events in the middle of COVID. I don't know of another city that really had that, even at the national level.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. You see it happening everywhere. And if you pass by City Hall, you'll see what he's talking about there. It is tremendous. And it's such a great, such a great place to live. One of the issues that we have faced, and the country has faced through COVID is the issue with mental health and emotional health and support and so forth. What are you guys doing? What has been the approach? Obviously, having the parks is such a big asset because people can get outside, they can get get some sunshine. That's a big part of it. And what else can we be doing as a community to help support that?
Well, I think there's a number of different things, which is really getting people to the right people that can help them. I mean, during COVID, I took the opportunity as mayor to do a number of programs with the JMH on mental health programs for our community. And we actually had, right before COVID started, we were beginning a program with FIU. And we did that through our park system, in particular for children. I think one of the biggest issues, and I think we're probably going to add some programs in the coming year. And when I say add, it's not going to be us because we're not best geared for that. We can provide the facility and certainly work with either the Children's Trust, with FIU, we have a couple of other universities here like Carlos Albizu that deal a lot with graduating psychologists to, in particular, help the children, which I think it's been underestimated. There's definitely been a lot of impact to adults. Let's not downplay that either. Yeah. But the reality is that our kids have been facing something that probably hasn't been faced in almost 100 years in the United States of America. Right. Going to school with masks, vaccinations, close downs, So I think that we're going to need to continue to focus on that. I think mental health in general needs to be reapproached, we as a society. But with COVID, I think that the message has been clear that there has to be an improvement on that. So,
and especially when we talk about, we mentioned the parks. So another highlight, Doral Central Park is going to be a massive, massive, unbelievable park. And I don't know if a lot of people have driven by 87th Avenue to see that in action. Give us a glimpse as to, what's going to be there. What's that going to be like once it's done?
Yeah, it's the largest park project in the state. It's a $120 million project right now.
Wow.
It's going to have we'll have the first competitive pool built in Miami-Dade County probably in about 60 to 70 years. It'll have a facility for exercise and meeting rooms and working out for the community. It'll have an amphitheater, baseball fields, some which can be turned into soccer fields also, running path, kayaking area, even a lazy river, tennis courts also. So the park really encompasses a lot of different things put together in a plan where it'll be in the middle of the community. Our goal with that park, which was approved by voters by I apologize because I don't know how to turn off my new iPhone. I didn't know how to put it on silent. So the park encompasses probably it's a 80+ acre park, encompasses many of the things that we feel can be used not only by the residents but also by the business community. And I think it's critical for us because my goal was always, hey, if Sergio is working in Doral and he doesn't want to fight traffic but wants to train for a triathlon, we have now a facility where you can go swim, you could run, and you can exercise or you can bike. And in the meantime, it's going to be in a very green and pleasant setting. So at the same time, if you're a resident, you now will be able to have a facility. And we've had other facilities. We built our first basketball courts about 4 or 5 years ago, indoor basketball courts. We've already had the outdoor ones. This will be a facility that will give us an additional opportunity because they're being used very much at Doral Legacy Park. And then the amphitheater will give us the opportunity to have some outdoor events, whether musical or whatnot, which we do some in downtown Doral, but it's in a much smaller setting. So the voters voted for it. I felt that I was supportive of it, but I felt it was up to the residents to determine whether they tax themselves. And our goal, Sergio, which I think we've talked about before, is to have a park within a 10-minute walk of every single resident. And this will help us accomplish that goal. And that's a national standard few places can meet.
Yeah, especially down here, right? It might be a 10-minute drive for most people, if anything, right, at the very minimum. So that's pretty powerful. So you've had a tremendous career. You have a lot of folks that look up to you from the community. From your perspective, who has been your kind of mentor? Who are the people that you aspire to be like, or who have inspired you throughout your years?
I think the greatest inspiration for me was my father. He's no longer with me, but one of the things when he passed away, somebody asked me that question, and he was always my greatest inspiration. Beyond the ability to lose everything and come and start again with a family, he was the same person in business as he was at home. In other words, some people sometimes bifurcate their personalities between a different personality in business than what you do with your own family. I never heard anyone, and even years after he passed away, not say that he was an honest man of character, integrity, and values. So I think he was really the greatest driving force for me. I like to read a lot, from the ancients to the modern ages. We just lost today, as we're doing this interview, we lost Colin Powell, which was a obviously terrible loss, and probably someone who I consider had the highest standards, regardless of what political party you're in. Mm-hmm. I would tell you, Marcus Aurelius, the last of the great Roman emperors, mm-hmm. and Stoicism, had a great quote in Meditations, which is, don't ask what a good man should be, just be one. He represented that. He was the emperor, and he always reminded people that he was just a person representing them. Teddy Roosevelt, I have great admiration for. I think he did a lot of good things for the national parks and for reforming things in the United States. Ronald Reagan, I have tremendous admiration for. He brought back our country when we were probably in one of the greatest crises we had in the past century. So, look, I think it all goes back to, the person that's had the greatest impact has been my father. No doubt about that. And there's a lot of other people I know who are fantastic. But if the person who I think, along with my mother, obviously, but the person who I look up to as far as being emblematic of being the same person, honest, integral, with a good value system, good character, no matter where you are, whether you're alone or in a room of 1,000 people, was my father.
So 2 more questions. If you could travel back in time and visit your younger self at some point in your life, what advice would you give yourself? right? So for those listening who are in, in the early stages of their career and so forth, this is the idea here is for the mayor to reflect back on, okay, what's that one thing I wish I would have known or held on to or kind of had faith in? What would that be?
Yeah, I would say that's a great question, by the way. I would say pick a philosophy of life. And what do I mean by that? I mean, set your standards early. Learn, always be learning, because I think I plan on learning until the day I die, because I think you get better every single day. But pick a philosophy of life. One of the things, I'm practicing Catholic, but one of the things that has attracted me to studying Stoicism so much the last 4 or 5 years is the fact that the virtue, justice, courage, a philosophy of life, and then you have to live that philosophy, because what's going to happen is, as you get more successful, as you see other people sometimes succeed with shortcuts, you start to think that it's easier to do it that way. But if you have a philosophy of life early on, and I said that it's a great, you asked me a great question, because I told my daughters, pick a philosophy of life. They're in their 20s right now, and do it now that you're starting to go out into the business world, into the working world.
Right.
My two oldest daughters, not the little one, obviously. But that would be my best advice. And study it and make sure that that philosophy represents what you believe is the best you.
Right. And that's fantastic, because it's authentic to you. So you got to make sure it's not just somebody else's philosophy that you're adopting because it seems like that's the right thing to do. You got to pick your own lane and your own values and stick to those, and that'll help you stay within the the guardrails as you do get more successful and you fall into these these kind of temptations. It'll serve as a beacon, right? Kind of true north is this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, look, we always talk about the man in the mirror, and it could be the woman in the mirror. You have to, when you look at yourself in the mirror every morning, you have to know that you're true to yourself and you're trying to be the best you can be. And if the answer to those two questions is no on either one, I think you need to reevaluate.
So last question, was there a game-changing moment in your life, an event or something that someone said to you, or something that you could look back on and say, man, that was a critical inflection point in my life, or when something, finally cleared up? Was there a point in your life that was happening?
That's another great question, because I think I may have had a couple, but I'm going to tell you the one that I think probably had the greatest role in my life. I was playing high school basketball, and unfortunately for me, I had transferred schools at one point, and that year I felt I was more talented than some of the other individuals, and I did not make the JV team, and it was devastating. I got Michael Jordan. The same thing happened to Michael Jordan, except he obviously went on to much more basketball success. Eventually I'd make the team at the next year. But I had a teacher. His name was Mr. Simmons. Interesting guy, and I was very bothered by that, because I thought it was very unfair. He was also the JV coach, and he put me in and said, you're a very talented guy, but there's problems, sometimes when you react to things a certain way, and sometimes from the neck up, our checkup is more important from the neck up, than from the rest of us. And he gave me a book called The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale.
Wow.
And I know that the book, but I don't know if the listeners all do know the book, but it's probably, Norman Vincent Peale was one of the founders, obviously, of the positive thinking movement in our country. And that book had a tremendous impact on me. And I'm going to tell you, I don't forget one of the first chapters. I've never forgotten one of the first chapters, and I repeat this to a lot of people. I even say it to my kids. Norman Vincent Peale said, life there's always going to be an obstacle. The obstacle will be the way. There's going to be obstacles. And he was talking to a gentleman who was very unhappy about things that had happened. So they got in a car and drove for an hour. He said, I'm going to take you to the only place where there are no problems. An hour later, they got to the cemetery, and Norman Vincent Peale told them, this is the only place there are no problems if you're alive. And that had a tremendous impact on me. And, I think it taught me a great lesson, that out of life's most difficult moments come some of the best opportunities to grow.
Wow, that was awesome. Yeah, absolutely. The problem is the way, right? The struggle is the way.
Yep.
As one of the famous football coaches said, I think embrace the suck. It's all a matter of perspective, right? Because it's true. It's the nuggets are found in the tough spots, right? You got to go through the coal to get to the diamond.
Correct.
So
Correct.
You've been a tremendous guest, my friend. Thank you so much for what you do for the community and the great future you have. You're going to be leaving our precious city of Doral in the next year or so, moving on to bigger and better things. Maybe not better, but bigger for sure.
Bigger for sure. Better, I don't know.
Yeah. So congratulations on all the success, and I'm sure that all the folks in the community absolutely appreciate all the work you've done and with your team and your staff. I mean, it takes a village to do it.
Absolutely.
But it was absolutely because of your leadership. So thank you so much for being on the show, my friend. You are a game changer. And any final words?
No, thank you for the opportunity. And, I go back to, what we talked about before. Don't ask what a good man or woman can be, just be one. And if you do that, I think we could all make a difference.
Love it. All right, guys, see you next week on the next episode of Game Changers. And make sure to say hi to JC when you see him here in the city of Doral. We'll talk to you next week, guys. Take care. If you loved what you heard in today's episode of Game Changers, please subscribe and rate us. The lessons and the stories in these podcasts are immensely valuable, so I invite you to share them with a friend who needs to hear it. You may end up being the game changer in their lives.